A cluster of videos has been spreading recently claiming that artificial intelligence just used advanced three-dimensional scanning to finally decode Stonehenge, uncovering terrifying secrets, hidden biological signatures, and mathematical codes that supposedly prove ancient humans possessed knowledge we have somehow forgotten. Some versions even quote a computational archaeologist from a major university who apparently discovered that Stonehenge was secretly built to store information like some kind of prehistoric hard drive, complete with dramatic claims about UNESCO reclassifying the site and governments forming emergency research councils in response. It is a genuinely compelling story. It is also, as far as any actual published research, any real named scientist or any peer-reviewed journal can confirm, completely invented. No such researcher exists. No such study has ever been published. No government body has ever reclassified Stonehenge based on any AI discovery. But here is what makes this whole situation so strange. Scientists really have used advanced scanning technology to study Stonehenge in extraordinary detail over the past several years, and the real discoveries that came out of that research did not need a single fabricated claim to be absolutely fascinating. If you like real archaeological breakthroughs more than manufactured mysteries, hit that subscribe button, because what scientists have actually learned about Stonehenge recently is stranger and more solidly proven than anything a fake viral post could invent. Stonehenge sits on Salisbury Plain in Wiltshire, England, and its story stretches back much further than most people realize. Evidence suggests the site held cultural significance even before the stones themselves arrived, with traces of wooden posts dating back roughly 10,000 years, long before the circular monument most people picture today ever existed. A circular ditch and bank structure, the earliest true precursor to the stone circle, was constructed around 6,000 years ago. The stones themselves, the towering sarsens and the smaller blue stones that make Stonehenge instantly recognizable, were not. Raised until construction began in earnest around 3000 BCE, with the monument undergoing multiple significant redesigns and rearrangements across the following 2,000 years, each phase reflecting changing needs, beliefs, or priorities among the generations who kept returning to reshape it. For centuries, that basic outline was about as far as archaeologists could confidently go. Where the stones actually came from, and exactly how Neolithic people managed to transport and erect them, remain genuinely unresolved questions. The real technological breakthroughs in recent Stonehenge research started, appropriately enough, with laser scanning, though not in the exaggerated, mystical way viral videos tend to describe it. Back in 2002, a research team from Wessex Archaeology, working with a specialist company called Archaeoptics, used an early three-dimensional laser scanner to examine faint Bronze Age carvings on one particular stone within the monument, known as Stone 53. Archaeologist Richard Atkinson had first spotted the carvings back in 1953, faint outlines of a dagger and an axe head etched into the surface. A follow-up survey in 1956 eventually identified 14 separate axe carvings scattered across the same stone. But it was the 2002 laser scan that finally allowed researchers to study these markings in genuinely microscopic detail, capturing hundreds of thousands of individual three-dimensional measurements at a resolution of 0.5 millimeter, fine enough to reveal subtle tool marks invisible to the naked eye. This early scanning work laid the technical groundwork for everything that followed, including far more advanced geochemical and photogrammetric studies conducted over the following 2 decades. If a real scientific mystery like this genuinely interests you, go ahead and smash that like button. It genuinely helps this channel keep covering stories exactly like this one. It is worth appreciating exactly how difficult that 2002 laser scanning project actually was for its time. Early three-dimensional scanners were bulky, expensive pieces of equipment, and capturing hundreds of thousands of precise measurement points across an irregular, weathered stone surface required extremely careful calibration to avoid distortion. The resulting point cloud data had to be processed into a usable three-dimensional solid model using custom software the Archaeoptics team developed specifically for this kind of archaeological work. That level of technical effort, dedicated almost entirely to studying a handful of faint Bronze Age carvings on a single stone, illustrates just how much painstaking groundwork went into establishing scanning as a legitimate archaeological tool decades before anyone was throwing around casual claims about artificial intelligence solving ancient mysteries in a single afternoon. The single biggest genuine breakthrough in modern Stonehenge research actually has nothing to do with artificial intelligence at all. It has to do with geochemistry, and specifically, figuring out exactly where each individual stone in the monument originally came from. For more than 4 centuries, the origin of Stonehenge's massive sarsen stones, the towering sandstone blocks that form the monument's outer circle and central trilithons, remained a genuine unresolved stones weigh up to 25 tons apiece. In 2020, a research team led by geomorphologist David Nash finally cracked the case, publishing their findings in the journal Science Advances. Using a combination of portable X-ray fluorescence, scanning conducted directly on the standing stones, followed by more detailed laboratory analysis of a core sample drilled from Stone 58 during 1958 conservation work, and only returned to researchers decades later in 2018, the team demonstrated that 50 of the 52 sarsen's at Stonehenge share a strikingly consistent chemical signature. That signature traced back to a specific, identifiable source area called West Woods, located roughly 25 kilometers north of Stonehenge near Marlborough. After literally centuries of speculation, researchers had finally pinpointed exactly where the primary building material for one of the world's most famous monuments had actually been quarried. The technical details behind that discovery are worth appreciating, because portable X-ray fluorescence scanning works by firing a small burst of X-rays directly at a rock surface and measuring the specific pattern of energy that bounces back, a pattern that varies depending on the exact mixture of chemical elements present within that particular stone. Different quarry sites tend to produce distinct, identifiable chemical fingerprints based on their unique underlying geology. By scanning stone after stone directly at the monument itself, without needing to remove or damage any of the protected sarsen's, Nash's team was able to build a detailed chemical profile for nearly every stone in the circle. The recovered 1958 core sample, drilled from the center of one particularly massive trilithon stone decades earlier and thought lost for years before eventually resurfacing, provided the crucial laboratory-grade confirmation needed to match that chemical fingerprint precisely against candidate source locations across southern England, ultimately narrowing the search down to the specific ridge of high ground known as West Woods. The smaller bluestones scattered throughout the monument's interior told an even more remarkable story. These stones, weighing between 2 and 5 tons each, had already been traced by earlier researchers to a specific outcrop in the Preseli Hills of West Wales, a staggering distance of roughly 230 kilometers from Stonehenge itself. Exactly how Neolithic. People transported multi-ton stones across that kind of distance, whether by an overland route using sledges and log rollers, or by sea along ancient coastal waterways, remains a subject of genuine ongoing debate among archaeologists. But the geochemical matching itself is considered rock solid. These smaller stones represent one of the clearest pieces of physical evidence anywhere in prehistoric Britain for genuinely long-distance, highly organized transport of raw materials, requiring a level of planning and coordinated labor that continues to impress researchers studying Neolithic society today. Interestingly, some of the bluestone outcrops identified in Wales show physical evidence of deliberate ancient quarrying activity, including stone wedges and platforms that appear to have been purpose-built to help lever large slabs away from the surrounding rock face, dated through associated charcoal and artifacts to roughly the same era as Stonehenge's earliest construction phases. This quarrying evidence has led some researchers to propose an even more intriguing possibility, that the bluestones may have first stood as an entirely separate stone monument somewhere near their original Welsh quarry site, before later being dismantled, transported, and reassembled at Stonehenge, effectively relocating an existing sacred structure rather than building an entirely new one from raw, previously unused material. The theory remains debated, but it adds yet another layer of genuine complexity to a monument that clearly meant a great deal to the people who kept returning to reshape it across 2,000 years of continuous use. Then, in 2024, came what might be the single most surprising Stonehenge discovery of the past several decades. At the very center of the monument lies a unique recumbent stone known as the altar stone, long assumed to share a common origin with the nearby Welsh bluestones simply because of its proximity within the site. A team of researchers decided to test that assumption directly, using an extremely precise dating technique involving the analysis of tiny mineral grains, specifically zircon, apatite, and rutile crystals, embedded within fragments of the stone. These microscopic minerals each carry their own internal geological age signature, effectively acting as a kind of natural fingerprint tied to the specific bedrock formation they originally crystallized within. Because researchers were not permitted to chip new samples directly from the protected monument itself, the team instead analyzed preserved rock fragments collected during much earlier excavations, some dating all the way back to the 1840s. This dating method works because zircon crystals are remarkably durable and chemically stable, capable of surviving essentially unchanged for hundreds of millions or even billions of years after they first formed deep within the Earth. By measuring the ratio of specific radioactive elements trapped within each individual crystal, researchers can calculate an extremely precise age for the exact moment that particular grain of rock originally solidified, long before it was ever eroded, transported, and eventually compacted into the sandstone that would become the altar stone. When the team compared the specific combination of ages recovered from the altar stone fragments against known geological databases spanning the entire British Isles, one region stood out as an unmistakable match, a level of statistical certainty that left little room for alternative interpretation. Conducted at correspondingly higher ultrasonic frequencies, since sound waves scale inversely with the size of the space they travel through. Every individual stone replica needed to closely match the exact surface texture, chips, dents, and curves of its real-world counterpart, since even small surface irregularities can meaningfully alter how sound reflects off a hard, uneven material like sarsen or bluestone. Some replica stones were three-dimensional printed as hollow shells and backfilled with concrete to achieve realistic weight and density, while others were cast using a plaster and polymer mixture, with every single model stone finished in an automotive-grade cellulose spray paint specifically chosen to prevent sound from penetrating the material's surface pores in ways the real stone would not naturally allow. The results were genuinely striking. Sound inside the completed monument would have been noticeably enhanced, amplifying both speech and music for anyone standing within the stone circle itself, creating an acoustic environment researchers compared to standing inside a small lecture hall or even a modest cathedral. At the same time, that same enhanced sound remained almost entirely contained within the monument, poorly projected outward to the surrounding landscape, and largely inaudible to anyone standing outside its boundaries. Acoustics researcher Bruno Fazenda has described the effect as roughly comparable to how a modern person might feel walking into a grand cathedral for the first time, a sudden physically noticeable shift in the surrounding sound environment. In other words, whatever rituals, ceremonies, or gatherings once took place inside Stonehenge, the acoustic evidence strongly suggests they were designed to be experienced by the people physically standing inside the circle, not broadcast outward to a larger surrounding crowd, adding a genuinely new dimension to ongoing debates about how the monument was actually used. This is really where the true, evidence-based picture of Stonehenge comes into focus, and it is worth appreciating just how much painstaking, unglamorous scientific work sits behind each individual piece of this puzzle. Portable X-ray fluorescence scanners pressed directly against ancient stone surfaces. Zircon crystals, smaller than a grain of sand, carefully extracted and dated using specialized laboratory equipment. A physical scale model built from three-dimensional printed replicas and tested inside a sound chamber using calibrated speakers and microphones. None of these methods involve mysterious, unnamed artificial intelligence systems uncovering forbidden secrets. They involve real scientists, real published papers, real named research teams, and years of careful, methodical work, the kind that rarely generates a dramatic viral headline but consistently produces genuinely reliable answers. It is also worth noting that machine learning and computational tools genuinely do play a role in modern archaeology, just not in the sensationalized way viral videos describe. Researchers increasingly use pattern recognition software to help sort through massive geochemical data sets, lighter surveys, and photogrammetric point clouds far faster than a human analyst working alone ever could, essentially acting as a powerful assistant for spotting subtle statistical patterns across huge volumes of data. That is a legitimate, valuable use of modern computing power. It is simply a world apart from the fantasy version circulating online, where a single unnamed AI supposedly uncovers hidden codes, biological signatures, or forbidden mathematics in one dramatic afternoon of scanning. So why does the fake AI decoding narrative keep spreading anyway? The pattern by now should feel familiar. Real archaeological research is slow, incremental, and often technical, arriving in the form of peer-reviewed journal articles filled with careful qualifications and statistical uncertainty, a viral video promising that artificial intelligence has uncovered a terrifying, forbidden secret, hidden inside an ancient monument offers something far more immediately satisfying, a clean, dramatic answer wrapped in the borrowed credibility of modern technology, even when no such technology, study, or scientist actually exists behind the claim. These videos borrow the genuine excitement surrounding real advances in archaeological science, geochemical fingerprinting, laser scanning, acoustic modeling, and repackage it with invented, sensationalized claims specifically engineered to generate clicks rather than convey anything true. The real story of Stonehenge does not need any of that invention to remain one of the most compelling unsolved mysteries in human history. We now know, with genuine scientific confidence, that Neolithic Britain was capable of extraordinary long-distance coordination, moving a 6-ton stone more than 700 kilometers from northern Scotland, and quarrying, transporting, and precisely erecting sarsen stones weighing up to 25 tons each from a source 25 kilometers away. We know the finished monument created a genuinely distinctive acoustic environment, carefully containing amplified sound within its boundaries rather than projecting it outward, And we still do not fully know why any of this mattered so deeply to the people who built it. Whether Stonehenge functioned primarily as an astronomical calendar, a burial ground, a healing site, a gathering place for widely dispersed communities, or, as growing evidence increasingly suggests, some combination of all of these purposes woven together into a single, extraordinarily ambitious undertaking, refined and rebuilt by generation after generation over roughly 2,000 years of continuous use. The next time you come across a headline claiming artificial intelligence has finally decoded some ancient monument's terrifying secret, take a moment to check what is actually behind it. Look for a named researcher, look for an actual published study, look for a real institution willing to put its reputation behind the claim. More often than not, especially with a site as heavily studied and genuinely fascinating as Stonehenge, you will find that the true story, patient, evidence-based, and built stone by stone over literal centuries of careful research, was already remarkable enough on its own, long before anyone decided it needed an invented AI conspiracy to make it interesting. There's also something quietly reassuring in recognizing just how much real, hard-won progress archaeologists have made on Stonehenge without any of the exaggerated shortcuts these viral videos promise. 4 centuries of speculation about the Sarsen stones were resolved through patient geochemistry, not a single dramatic algorithm. A monument's central stone turned out to have traveled from the opposite end of the country, discovered not through some mysterious machine intelligence, but through careful mineral dating applied to fragments sitting in museum drawers since the 1840s. Real science, it turns out, has been quietly decoding Stonehenge for decades. It just never needed to call itself artificial intelligence to get the job done.